observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself. You aren't observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself. You aren't observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself. You aren't observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself. You
Hello, and welcome back for another episode of Monolock music, Sandakan music, and Sharon Graziani. And today it's a really special episode for me because it's the first time that I present to you my upcoming album, at least a snap out of it. And I want to tell you a little bit how I made it, what I was the concept about, and to share with you a little bit of this project that it's going to be one of the closing tracks of the album, and in general to talk about what is the process of making an album, especially for the psytrance producer. So let's start with this, that nowadays, like, to make an album seems like an unnecessary thing. If you look online, and most probably you do, you will see that the way to go with singles or with EPs, short ones, and as much as you can, which means that it's preferable to take let's say the album that I'm creating now, that is like over 10 tracks at the moment. I don't know how it will end up. And basically to release every month and to get more exposure or whatever. But in this case, my approach was different. I was trying to make something that have a concept. Like I can release a lot of tracks, and I was releasing during the years almost one track for a month, and sometimes even more, with collaboration with good people and with other labels, and in my own label Shagra. By the way, if we are talking about the label, so you can check our stuff online. Of course, you can press the like button and subscribe to our content. Join us through this journey of making music, psytrance music. You can check us on social media, and down below you have this in the description links to a virtual shop that you can find the equipment that I'm using in the studio, and other recommendable equipment. So in the meantime, to go back to what we were saying, so this journey of writing an album, I don't think that you need to go to it light-headed, and I don't think that you should do something that you regularly do. Like, my idea of an album is something that it should be first of all with a concept, with the beginning to the end, with kind of an idea what direction, what do you want to say, or what do you want to tell, because it's harder in an album. You need to have some kind of a story, of some kind of sound that follows, something that it's like reading a book or reading a column in a newspaper. So I guess, like, this is the imagery that I popped into my head. So the idea is to really get into the essence of the period that you are writing the album, and what is the idea behind it. In my perspective, the first track that I was writing for the album, and this is what was the concept over writing it, it was Oasis. Most of this album was written between 2020 to now. That now I'm actually in the final steps of mixing and taking the last decisions, which tracks goes in and which ones goes out. And it went to me to a journey of a lot of emotional situations, and you know that everything was closed, and you know, only the only thing that you want is to get your own oasis, if it's your private one, or actually, you know, to go to a vacation. And the concept behind me brought me to a lot of things, and mainly to touch my childhood and my experience and my culture, and basically to touch myself in a way of bringing myself into the album, and that it's not just another a track or a creation that goes out there. Now, I know that I say that almost every track that I make, or not almost, but every track that I make, have a concept behind it, have a story behind it. But here it's to tell a story over a period of time, which means that the album, it's like 1.5 hours or 2 hours maybe. This is what I was aiming for. It gives you a journey into a lot of places in the artist, and this is I think what you need to aim for. So before you go to write an album, think about it, what's going to influence it. This album was written for the dance floor, which means that every aspect of the tracks are aimed for the dance floor and for the people that dance, but it also have parts in it that are more into, like, I think that an album like this, you can actually listen to it unnecessarily only to dance to it, because it have a lot of elements inside that that bring this okay, I don't know don't want to compare, but like a Sprongel album that you can dance to it, but you can also listen to it at home and enjoy it. And this is the idea. Now, in this album, I was bringing another side of me that most probably you were hearing before in other music that I was making. And basically, because my childhood or the relationship with the trance music or psytrance music was starting in early age, somewhere around 95 maybe, with the first albums of Shiva Shidafu and again a lot of others, Elysium and Astral Projection, and a lot of other musicians. So I'm influenced with the older type of music, and you can hear it sometimes in my productions also. So I'm really into the Goa feel and to the old school vibe. And I was trying actually to bring this old thing into a newer sound or a newer concept, and to touch stuff that basically touched me, and to bring it forward into 2022. And mostly that's it. Like this is the story behind the album. Every track it have its own story. Also the name, like this specific one called Observing Yourself, it's also about that we need to more observe inside of ourselves, and to be conscious about what we do, if it's for ourselves, for our family, or for others. And it's also the relationship between the LSD or the the experience that you have with some kind of substance that can alternate the way that you see things or think about things. And basically they all bring us to look upon ourselves in relation to stuff. So yeah, this is the idea behind this one, and let's go track by track and see what it is. So basically, the track is starting actually with this really cool atmospheric melodic part. To get you into the mood. Joining with a vocal that, really typical for psytrance. And going in. Now another thing that it's really different between the music today and the music, let's say, of the 90s. That back in the 90s, the structure of the tracks would be different. Like in many cases, we used to call it as children that the track only started at 5 minutes. Which means that you had this track that you knew it by heart because there was, I don't know, it's not like today that there is 1,000 of producers with 1,000 of tracks coming out every day, and back then you had a cassette or I don't know, in later time maybe a CD. You would listen to the thing over and over and over again. You would know it by heart. But in many times in this in Goa music or the tracks, the music was running, there was development, there was this, and then in some point there was a story that was coming. This is as how I remember it. And basically we used to say, okay, the track was starting at 5 minutes or at 3 minutes. Until now it was okay, it was the track, we all recognize it, we all know what it is. But it was, it was starting at 5, like we all waited for this part to come, this melody or whatever. Today's track also kind of, this one that I'm showing, it's kind of straight, which means that it have its development and things, but it's more into the psytrance of today, but with elements of the past. So let's go over it like one by one. We have the kick, little bit support, fat bass, a little bit percussion on the background, hi-hat, snare, some fill, later on another fill, some effect, open hat, and the game of this. I usually, not in every track, but I like to do this thing. All these accents. So yeah, basically this is my drum section and bass and kick section. Let's go to the leads part. The leads parts are interesting. We have a bass rider. Basically work with the bass. So it's called bass rider. This actually should be first by hierarchy because it's the closest to bass drum. Let's see what. So we have this layer that it's going almost all over the track. It's playing with a main bass line. Give it another layer in the mid area and some atmospheric that it's not just same. And this is the same kind of. Give it acid sound to accompany it. I always like to put a chordy, some kind of a chord that comes and goes, with a little bit of delay, coming and going out, and a paddy, because it makes sense that it will be called paddy, to give an atmosphere. Then we have this over here. Oh. Some effects. Again, to create this feeling and atmosphere, a little bit of bizarreness. It's always a good thing when it comes to psytrance, to ear candy, I call it, like to grab the feel or the listening, and you know, you are having something dreamy coming and going. Some small pad comes and go. Another chordy. This is chordy 1 and chordy 2. Maybe chordy B also. And then we have the bell. Wake up. There is a bell. The bell is basically bringing the next section. Okay. Clock alarm. Wondering why there is a clock alarm after the bell. Why did I call it a clock alarm? Anyway, I like to write my channels in a weird way, as you see, called the clock alarm. I'm also dyslexic, so I have my own way to write stuff. So this, and we introduce the 303. Really simple 303. You can find in many places. We will get to the asce there. Asce there, it's the as I call it, the childhood feel. So this is the childhood feel. This is what I'm looking for when I'm listening to a track, especially this. And this is for me one of the main things. But let's continue with the whopper. Subtle. Another chordy. Another chordy. Again, this type of things that I put inside, I don't know how much they are psytrance oriented. Like usually in psytrance you have all this stuff that comes and go, but I try to bring a little bit something else to the plate because I like it, and also to soften some other elements that I have inside. So let's continue to hear. Use arpeggiator. Another one over here that accompany the runner. Like they work amazing together. And basically they are not question answer like sometimes producers say. They are just work together. They are created to accompany one another together with a small pad, with the chordy, and with the clock alarm, and with chord harp. And all of this come to work with this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So excited about. This is how it's all together. And to come to the asce there. Asce there 02. And the idea again, we had this part that for me it's exciting, like as much as I see it. I love this acid sound. I don't even remember because I have tendency, lately I do it different, but I do have a tendency to to bounce immediately when I have something that I like, and then I continue to work as it is. It's a tendency that comes from resource issues, which means that back in time when I was producing music, and I produced music for many years, almost from childhood, when a computer weren't that strong like I have one today. So the tendency was to design something, bounce it to wave, because then the computer have more resources to work with other virtual instruments and other plugins or whatever, and to have the raw material. And I was doing here the same because it's kind of a workflow that I have. Today I allow myself more to work into MIDI because latency is less pronounced or less disturbing, because again, resources and sound cards and whatever I use for that. So basically, yeah, this sound. Maybe like this, it doesn't sound much. And again, to calm down. ready. And it's always switching and coming back and go, so that you will always have interest. And going back to the asce, there 02. I just love it. It's like, for me, it's reminding me Blade, if you remember, the London team, whatever it's called. Like, for me, it brings me to this scene in the movie that, you know, if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. It's totally different, the original, of course, from this, but again, like for me, it's bringing you this in a psychedelic Goa trance way. It's really Goa type of acid playing with all these games, and I don't know. It just make me happy. This little crazy sound over here. Then we have the vocals. It's some effect and stuff on it to make it a little bit more interesting.
Observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself, observing yourself.
Observing yourself.
You aren't observing yourself, observing yourself.
And some
observing yourself, observing yourself,
typical psytrance vocal. Yeah, it's also a sound, for example, this is one of the sounds that if you go back in the 90s, honestly, you hear it almost in every track that it was it wasn't, let's say, almost in every track. This sound, it's typical for the 90s hardcore scene, I guess. I think that this specific sound was calling vibe. And I love it. It's, for me, it's reminding me Dune, if you know what I'm talking about, and Scooter, and other related music of the period, German music. It was, yeah, it's exactly this. And you don't hear it so much, but I know that it's there, and this is what counts. I guess that you hear it more in areas like this. Yeah, underneath, a little bit touch. And in the end of the track, so I like, okay, production-wise, maybe it doesn't matter. For people that listen, they don't know all this little stuff that I put inside, but I put them because it's part of the creation, and maybe somebody does recognize it or say, oh, this sound, like this sound, I remember it from, most probably he should be an adult now, but yeah, basically he's supposed to maybe to remember, oh, this is touching me in a way like this and remind me this. And again, the concept it's a part of an album. It's a part of a consciousness that I was trying to create with this album. It's not the leading track in the album. There is others that are totally different in idea, and this is towards the end of the album. Like, the album is starting in a way very, very, I wouldn't say soft, but really atmospheric, really big. And the tracks with time are going for kind of transformation, also in perspective of a set, that it starts more relaxed and more like ear candy and touching. It goes some kind of a journey inside. That towards the middle of the album there is a track that it's very emotional, let's say, or very soft in the concept. And from this one, basically, we had this half of the album that it's running between kind of atmospheric, tough music into something that it's a little bit more fast and sounding, let's call it like this. Again, this track is in a way it fits to the specific place in the album and supposed to create a specific atmosphere in it. So I hope that you liked the brief first glimpse of the album, and that it gives you a few ideas. Let me know in the comment down below what you think. If you would be interested to hear more developments from the album, snaps, other things, because I cannot publish all the album, of course, before it will be published. Or if you have more question about what is the process of making an album, or how to approach a specific thing, you can feel free to write me down below in the comments. Of course, I will remind you to like the page, to subscribe, and to follow us by pressing the bell. And of course, we have the beautiful links for the channel shop, and over there you can find all the equipment that we use to create the music, and the equipment that we recommend. I want to thank you very much for joining me, and I hope that you enjoyed this episode and the glimpse for the upcoming album. I see you next time. Bye bye.